Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us this morning for this session. I'm just going to firstly run through the Zoom housekeeping rules that we have. Oh, I was going to share my screen with you all. Hang on, bear with me 2 secs. Okay, there we go. Hopefully you can all see that little slide now. All right, so just if you can mute your mic, I think everybody knows to do that nowadays, so that would be great. If you would like to speak, then just raise your hand or your virtual hand. And then also just be mindful of other people in the session if you are speaking, just so that everyone does have the opportunity to contribute if they wish to do so. The other thing we've got on this slide just now is just a little disclaimer note, just advising that it's not always professional advice that's being delivered as part of these sessions, and if it is peer support and best practice information coming from other organisations, then just that of course you need to look at your own situation and assess your own needs and requirements before you implement anything. Okay, so that's the housekeeping done. We just thought that it would be useful to have this session to talk about the current offer from Scotland Excel in terms of their free associate membership, and what this might mean for your organisation in terms of procurement. It will include access to areas such as PPE, waste services, first aid materials, things that you might be thinking about in terms of planning to reopen your facilities. Yesterday's announcement feels a little bit promising around reopening facilities, and they were talking about the resumption potentially of children and young people being able to play contact sports outdoors on the 13th of July, so that's quite soon. So a lot of you will be getting prepared for that. So lots happening, lots of consideration required to all the safety and hygiene measures in particular. So hopefully this session will help you to think about some of those procurement needs. So just in terms of the format of this session, Neil from P4P is here, and he's going to talk a little bit about the options for collaboration and the support that's available from P4P. And we've also got Iain Murray on the call from Scotland Excel, so he'll be talking about that associate membership offer, what that means for third sector organisations, how the process works, frameworks that are available, and also a bit about opportunities for collective purchasing, and then just the support available from Scotland Excel. Following that, we'll have a Q&A session, so if anybody does have any questions, then please do ask them. There is also the chat function there, so if you've got any questions or anything you would like to contribute via the chat, please do. All right, so just quickly before we move on to Neil, I just had a few questions to get a bit of a sort of feel for the audience here today for Neil and for Iain. So if you just want to raise your hands for these questions. Has anyone collaborated with anyone else during this pandemic? Yeah, a few of you have. Obviously, some people are not really able to do very much right now, so they potentially will not have. Is anyone interested in collaborating with other organisations in the future? All right. Are any of you currently engaging with P4P? No, not too many, Bev. All right, and who has heard of Scotland Excel already? Few. Who has already accessed Scotland Excel frameworks? No one on this call. And who knows about collective purchasing? Not too much. All right, all good. Then hopefully this will be a good session. All
Hey,
right, I'll. Oh,
sorry, can you hear me? Because everybody's like not moving. They're all stuck in like a weird position. Because I'm back home and I'm having to use my dongle because my internet's not come. And I don't know if it's strong enough. Can you actually hear me? Like when you guys,
yeah,
I might just turn my video off because everyone's just stuck in a really weird like
yeah.
catch and
I think
flies position. I can't see anyone, so I don't know if actually I'm hearing.
yeah.
Right.
I think if you just turn your video off,
Yeah,
Danielle,
that might
hopefully
work a
that'll
bit
help.
better. Right, thanks, love.
All right, thank you.
Right.
Okay, so thanks for that. I'll just hand over to Neil, who will chat to you about P4P. And I've just made you the host, I think, now, Neil.
Oh, thank you. It's good to have the power. Right, I'm going to try and share my screen. Do you see that okay?
Yeah.
Right, hello, some of you know me already. My name is Neil Young and I help coordinate the P4P project. I'm going to keep it fairly brief today, and I'm going to kind of concentrate on providing a background to P4P, what support we offer, and then I'm going to go into a wee bit of detail around the different types of partnerships that you could form. So P4P was established to support third sector organisations, mainly social enterprises, to develop partnerships with a view to bidding jointly for procurement opportunities. We tend to work with kind of mainly smaller social enterprises to access contracts, and that's to help achieve the Scottish Government's aim of increasing the number of social enterprises which are delivering public services, and that's included within the Scottish Government's 10-year social enterprise strategy. We were established in 2017, so we've been going for 3 years, although SEN has been involved within partnership development side of things much longer than that, and P4P itself was based on the success of a previous pilot, which ran for a few years before then. It's worth noting as well that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have actually expanded some of our services to support third sector organisations with collaboration more generally, and not with just looking at procurement opportunities. Co-funding is provided through the Scottish Government's 10-year social enterprise strategy, although we do seek income and generate our own income from other sources. And we're managed and kind of hosted by SEN, but we're actually governed by a partnership, which includes Social Firms Scotland, SEN, the Scottish Community Alliance, and also Cooperative Development Scotland, which is part of Scottish Enterprise. So we offer a really wide range of one-to-one services, and that focuses on providing organisations with the knowledge and skills required to tender for contracts and with developing new partnerships. So you can see some examples have been provided there. So it could include helping organisations to draft a partnership agreement or memorandum of understanding, advice on the different consortium models that you can adopt. We facilitate partnership meetings. We also facilitate partnership development sessions, and we can help organizations plan and draft tender responses collectively. We also hold regular events and training. So obviously that's not stopped due to COVID. We've been delivering training sessions digitally via Zoom. And those tend to focus on promoting the benefits of partnership working and upskilling organizations in that area, as well as tendering for contracts. Our website, which is worth mentioning, is really kind of our primary engagement tool. and it contains a very, very wide range of downloadable resources such as guidance documents, templates, case studies. It also has details of relevant opportunities that are coming up for third sector organisations. So I'd direct you towards that if you've not taken a look before. Our flagship resource is something called the Collaboration Toolkit, which is a step-by-step guide to collaboration, which is designed to help organisations track their progress with developing a new partnership over a long period of time. And it's split into 3 phases that typically kind of follow the typical life cycle of a collaborative project. So we launched that quite a long time ago, and we will be looking at refreshing it soon, but it's been a massive success. I mentioned before that we've expanded our services kind of due to the COVID crisis, and as a result, we launched a new guide called Collaboration During a Crisis. And this has also really been a massive success. You can download it at our website, which is p4p.org.uk on the resources section. I think we've now hit about 250 downloads in around a month or 2, which is quite a lot. So during the pandemic, partnership working has become more important than ever. There could be a need to develop and deliver a new project collectively with other organisations. And then we used our previous experience that we built up to develop this new guide, which describes any different or unique approaches to partnership development during a crisis kind of situation. I did briefly want to kind of talk about the different types of partnerships that you can form. Please note, this is a very brief summary of the different types of partnership. First of all, formal partnerships. So this is where there is a kind of legal relationship between the partner organizations, and there are 2 ways you can do that. You can either draft a partnership agreement which has legally binding clauses, or you can set up a new legal entity which is jointly owned by the partners. So sometimes you would call that a joint venture. That can have many benefits in terms of the long term. If you're looking at developing a partnership over the long term, but an informal partnership is another type of partnership, and that's one that does not have any legal status. So this is best suited to shorter term projects where there is no commercial relationship. And that would usually also be governed by a non-binding memorandum of understanding. So I think there's like is that alarm? Do you hear the alarm? I think, yeah, did you hear that? I think that's gone off now. There are also partnerships for tendering, and I'm not going to go into any detail here. These partnerships are a little different, and you'll find more information about different types of partnerships you can form for tenders in the collaboration toolkit. Top tips. So firstly, prioritize your actions based on how urgent the situation is. So if you need to urgently develop a new partnership, you might prioritize just drafting a simple partnership agreement. Ask yourself how much flexibility you need, and then this will help you decide whether to adopt a more formal or informal model. So for example, if you need a lot of flexibility, you might decide to adopt the informal model. And if your partnership is informal, then a simple non-binding partnership agreement can help prevent different interpretations of roles and responsibilities further down the line or disagreements. And if you do have some time, please do try and get to know your partner already, we tend to find that the most successful partnerships are ones in which the partners already know each other. So if you don't know them, try and find out what their charitable objectives or social aims are, their financial history, what's their values, or what's their operating model and kind of funding situation like. Right, okay, so that's me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm just going to introduce Iain. So if you have any questions, I noticed like some questions were being posted there. I can just answer them at the end. So kind of Iain's going to speak next. Iain works with Scotland Excel, who manage a large number of frameworks which primarily enable local authorities to kind of purchase collectively, and that can help them achieve savings for products and services which are commonly purchased. So Scotland Excel membership is currently being offered to third sector organisations for free during the pandemic. And Iain will now speak about this in a little more detail. So I'll pass the host back to you, Jude.
Thanks, Neil. Iain, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thanks very much for that, Neil. That was really interesting. A refresher for myself. So, as Neil said, I work for Scotland Excel. I am a part of the associates team who look after our non-local authority members across the third sector, charities, housing associations, arm's length organisations and sports complexes. So, as Neil said, at Scotland Excel we are the Scottish Government's centre of procurement expertise for local government. However, we do encompass roughly about 100 members of associates, which I've just described there. During the pandemic, our executive team decided that we would offer free of charge membership on a temporary basis to any eligible organisation that could potentially be members of ours. So we're set up for not-for-profit. So if you're a social enterprise or a charity, then you get access to this free of charge during the pandemic. We have about 74 frameworks, and on average, with this benchmarking that I do, out with COVID's a different situation, people generally save between 10 and 40% on the products that they can buy via ourselves. You will find the odd cluster where it is cheaper in the current arrangement you have or to buy it separately, but over the years that's what I've found. So in terms of the offer, what we're trying to do is for organisations that need to restart their business or reopen, or they need new equipment to deal with the pandemic, hand gels, PPE, waste, etc. All of our contracts are set up for them. All of our suppliers are aware that we have this free offer available. So we've tried to minimise it as much as we possibly can. So generally speaking, if you're a member, you need to go through the committee, you need to be on the website, you need to have X, Y, Z. We've taken all that away. What we're running on now is a supplier should give you the same pricing our members do, with you just picking up the phone and saying, I'm a Scotland Excel member for this interim period. There is quite a number of products that we don't have fixed pricing for at the minute. As you can imagine, with the pandemic and the sourcing issues that we've had and PPE that's been in the news the last couple of months, hand gels, etc. Every supply chain is stretched. So we've gave suppliers leeway in the way it's working at the minute, and it is starting to come down, but it's not quite down yet, is when you phone up, if they've got the stock available for you to buy, then they will give you the price on that day that they can sell it for. So it won't be the rates that we would normally expect, but might be best value. It's a different avenue for you guys to purchase from if you choose this. It's not a you have to use this, it's simply an offer. So if you feel that the price is right for you and it's better than what you've been getting, or you just need the stock, it's just another avenue for you to purchase. And that, whereas the other frameworks that aren't really set up or COVID supply chain related, the fixed pricing is kept. So what we're trying to do is get organisations that are going to take part in the membership is to stick to spot purchasing frameworks or items that you can buy and there's no lasting contract. We've had a few inquiries from areas where they've been interested in telecare or security guards, etc. And the problem with that is once the free membership ends, and I don't know when that will be, it won't be during lockdown anyway, we then, if they don't join Scotland Excel, then they're left in limbo because they've got a contract that's running post the agreement with ourselves, and then that's up to supplier to dictate the price in that, because we won't be able to do anything. So if you are interested in membership, I would stick to the product one, or if it's a defined service that you know is only going to last until lockdown ends. Because if you try and go beyond that, then you might have an issue contractually if you choose not to carry it, if you don't feel it's best value for Scottish membership, or the costs don't justify what you get, which is completely understandable. So that's kind of how the process works. In terms of the frameworks available, as I said, we've got a large portfolio. In this current climate, a lot of them aren't really going to be much use to you. It will be your PPE, it will be your first aid materials, potentially your fire safety products, and anything else that you need to get yourself up and running. I'll put an email out to Jude after the call. We've got an example of how suppliers are dealing with COVID. And one of the flyers that we've got is from a company called Lion Safety. Lion Safety are based in Falkirk, the Service School of Scotland, and they've really been out to be the best they possibly can in this current pandemic. I'm not saying you should use them. What I'm saying is, out of all the supplier communications we've seen, these guys are going above and beyond, in my opinion. Might not work for you, but you can have a look at the flyer, and they're doing all the markings and the glass panels, etc., that you may need in perspex for setting up the gyms, etc., along with the hand gels and the PPE equipment and the masks, etc. They've got all them as well. In terms of other frameworks, you've got like ground maintenance, you've got transport frameworks, construction frameworks, etc. Again, one of the flyers I've got details all of our portfolio, so I will share that with Jude at the end of the call. You can have a look. You can contact me at any point. Jude, if you can pass my contact details on, that'd be great. In terms of ordering, what we're trying to do is consolidate or collect purchases where we can. As you can imagine, suppliers are very, very busy, especially for key pandemic items that all businesses need. So what we're finding is we're doing work with a large range of social enterprises and organisations through this pandemic, and some are quite big, some are fairly small. If you have a small requirement in the grand scheme of things for masks or hand gels, etc., and you contact a supplier, they may, unless where you're geographically located is next to one of the normal dropping points for a council or a large sports complex that are currently members, they may not be able to get it to you as soon as they can, or if at all they'll be able to accept the order, because they need to take a driver's time to come out and do the order for the relatively small quantity. So what we're trying to encourage is do collective purchasing, where if you're all in one similar area and you've all got the same requirements, buy it as one, if it's possible, and then get it delivered to that location and then get it disseminated out. I don't know how that works. I don't know how you're all geographically based, but it is working for, we're currently working with the National Museums and Galleries Scotland, and they've got locations everywhere. So they might have a sculptor in the top of the Highlands, so they're having to coordinate that and try to get them to a local point within Highland, so then the suppliers can work with it. But you're best talking to suppliers, because it may turn out that they actually have a drop that's a mile down the road and they're absolutely happy to drop off a small quantity if it's required. But if they don't have a driver in that area, you may find the suppliers are saying, well, we can't really get in. It's maybe not the best thing that you want to hear, but unfortunately in the current situation, suppliers need, you know, the way the government set it up, NHS get first refusal on PPE equipment. So the suppliers need to work down that triage chain, if it were, in terms of stock and priority. So they've been led by the government on where that goes. In terms of social enterprises and gyms, I would imagine you would fall into the second category of that. So the top is NHS. Once they say no, we're not interested, then it comes down a level. But I don't know, I've not seen the structure in a while. I don't want to say that you definitely are too, because it may have changed, and I'm not fully up to date with all this. I'll see if I can find out after the call. Okay. In terms of experiences, what we're finding is that for some companies it's working really well, but however in other companies it's not so working as well either. And we are working with suppliers to try and streamline that as best we can. Unfortunately, I think it's just the nature of the pandemic and how the suppliers are dealing with it individually, but we are actually working with suppliers to ensure that it runs as smoothly as we possibly can. Those who have purchased from it are quite happy. They seem to be relieved that there's an opportunity there to access a supply chain in circumstances. So they seem happy with that in terms of that. There are others who have said we've not managed to get what we were looking for or whatever, so they are continuing to work. Not to say they won't call off at a later date, but just when I spoke to them a couple of weeks back, they hadn't quite got to that point yet. Okay. In terms of support offered, you've obviously got myself, you've also got my colleague Colin as well, who will manage this process for you and take you through it by email and by phoning around and helping you in any shape or form that we can. And we are ranging support in terms of email, phone calls, hosting meetings, etc. So more than happy to try and delve in where we can and help out where we can. And if it is of interest to you, then you know it is there for you to access. And again, as I said, it gives you another route to market that you may not have. But you need to do your best value on it to make sure you get the best deal for your business. Okay. And I think that's me. I've covered everything that I said about. I think, Jude, is there anything else you want me to cover?
Not specifically from me. I guess we'll open up for questions if anyone's got any questions for either you or Neil. I guess I was just wondering, Neil, if people are interested in collective purchasing and looking into that and joining up with other social enterprises or third sector organisations in their area, can you or P4P provide support with that if required?
I would need to double check that, to be honest, because that isn't traditionally where we would offer support. But it is obviously, because of the crisis, that might be something that we could potentially move into. I would double check that first. Obviously, I think your first contact would be, if you were looking at buying through Scotland Excel, would be Iain, of course. And I kind of presume that if the requirement maybe is too small, then maybe that's when you would potentially need to think about collective purchasing. Because, as he said, joining together in order to make it worth kind of the supplier's while.
Can I ask a question, Jude, Tara?
Yep.
I was just wondering, is the framework only for purchasing, or can you go on as a supplier as well, as in like providing training, workshops, etc.?
So I'm having to work off my mobile, so I'm going between mute and not mute. In terms of that, it is for purchasing only. We do, obviously our frameworks are available for suppliers to bid on that. However, every agreement we have is fixed for various lengths of time, depending on when they were tendered. In terms of training, we don't have a training framework. It's not something that we offer. In terms of suppliers, I believe there's a Scottish Government one.
Yeah.
But that's nothing to do with ourselves.
Right. Okay, thank you.
If I could maybe just add there, Tara, if you keep your eye out on for the tender alerts that we send out at P4P, if there is anything relevant in terms of training, I'm sure we would highlight that. So every single week we check to see what contracts are published, and we then add them to our website on the opportunities section. So if there were training or perhaps like linked to or employability kind of opportunities, we would most certainly flag that up. So don't worry about that.
Right, okay, thank you.
I'm muted. Oops. Any more questions for Neil or Iain?
If I can maybe ask kind of Iain a question around just what's the kind of the process if someone here did want to then purchase, and what's the actual process? Do they just get in contact with you, or do they have to fill out a form, or?
No, it's just purely contact either myself or Colin. As I said, we're trying to streamline it as much as we can. So an email, I'm interested, we'll then follow that up with another email that details the products that we have, how to call off the frameworks, etc. And any up-to-date sourcing information we have. So what we're doing once a week is, for key items, we are asking suppliers to let us know what their stock is, their stock availability is. So we can supply that as well and say, well, here's on that day, here's what they did have. And unfortunately, depending when you get the email, it could be 4 days out of date, it could be 2 days out of date. But no, it's purely an email-based thing. You know, there's no need to try and register on a website or fill in a form. It's purely either pick up the phone or email us and we'll come back to you.
Cool. Is there a minimum spend just now for a lot of the frameworks, or?
Not a lot of them. There are suppliers who do have minimum orders, but they're not hundreds of pounds, put it that way. They're all detailed in the schedules as well. So,
Sorry, so Iain, what by schedules, what do you mean?
So what I mean is on where we keep all of our products rather, there'll be a tab on the spreadsheet that has the supplier's contact details, and on that there will be, if they have a minimum order on it, as it's not a large amount. Anyway, but it is there for some suppliers. Not all suppliers have them, but some do. And whether or not they're waiving that at the minute, given the pandemic, I don't know, because obviously when they tendered that, it could be 2 or 3 years ago, that's what they felt they could cope with. It may be now that for the pandemic they've actually stopped that. I don't know.
Thanks, Ian.
No
I
problem.
know you said that you didn't know how long the free access would be available, but do you have a kind of indicative timescale around how long you consider that potentially to be available for? Given we're kind of moving through the phases and opening back up and...
Yes, I mean, obviously it's not going to end before lockdown's finished or even phase 4's finished, and I would be surprised if our exec team end it at lockdown as well. I think it will go into, because they need organisations need time to get themselves back up and running, and they need time to get what they need in a stockpile built up. So I would hope that it will be in place for a good bit after that. But what we're doing is we're going to fully communicate. Everyone who's requested information on it, we are going to go back out to them all and give them timescales. So it's not a case of, okay, it's going to stop on Friday and it's Tuesday. But both myself and Colin will try and give as much notice as we possibly can. But at the minute, it's impossible to say as to when this offer will end. Unfortunately, we don't, and because we don't know how long the pandemic is going to last, we could be sitting here next month and we go back a phase or whatever. It's too difficult to call.
Yeah, that's great. I totally appreciate that. Thank you. David?
Yeah, can I ask Ian, how much is your membership typically?
Typically, the minimum is £500 per annum. What we have done in the past is, if there's a collective, the one organisation has the membership and buys on behalf of 2 or 3 or 4 of them. We've had that in the past, but then it needs to be a formalised agreement between the organisations, not an informal one. So that's typically how it goes in terms of ourselves.
Is that paid in a one-off payment, or do you take it monthly? Or?
It's a one-off annual payment. So, we work April to March. So if you were to join 6 months into the year, it'd be £250 for the first year, then £500 thereafter.
Thank you. Any more questions?
If I can maybe just ask a question around what are the actual typical benefits of purchasing through the framework? So can you achieve kind of substantial savings in certain items?
Yes, you can. Typically, the benchmarking that I've seen for like products across sports equipment or PPE, it can be between 10 and 40%, sometimes even higher. I'd say on average, around about the 20% mark would be a fair one. Maybe getting up to 25%, but it really depends on what you're buying and the quantities that you currently buy already. We do have large organisations who have saved high percentages, and their spend is quite high already. So it's always worthwhile looking at and looking into. I would never advocate an organisation spending money on something that isn't of value to them. You would have to ensure that you do get value for money for, if you were to join Scotland Sale for the £500, then you would want to make sure that you can make that back through the savings, through the tangibles, through the cost avoidance as well. We facilitate the tendering. We do all the contract management on behalf of our members. So there's that aspect as well, which isn't a financial saving. It saves you time in having to go out and buy it when you can just pick up the phone and say, Scotland Sale member, here's my account code. Once you have it, the goods get delivered within 2 or 3 days, depending on the lead times that we've agreed with suppliers. So there's that cost is saved as well, although that's not included in your 10% saving. That's purely on the products or service that you're looking for.
Good, thank you. Do you have any examples of collective purchasing already? Because you kind of alluded to a couple, but is there any that you know that are kind of working quite well?
In terms of partnerships between our members?
Yeah, so are you aware of any kind of partnerships between your members for purchasing just now?
We've had a couple of joint RSLs call-off frameworks. They weren't our frameworks, but because the other side of our business is we do the procurement capability and improvement programme for housing associations and councils. So we are aware of collaboration in the housing sector. In terms of our frameworks, I think the only example we maybe have is the National Museums and Galleries Scotland. I don't know where they are with that. It's not myself that's dealing with it, but I know that they were looking to do a kind of collaborative approach, because some of the members are kind of 1- and 2-man museums. But I don't, in terms of ours, I think waste, I think there's a couple of councils collaborating waste and have a joint waste call-off from ourselves. But because our frameworks are set up for an individual price, our members generally purchase on them because they've already done it as a collective. So when we go out to market, it's on behalf of all of our members. So the council, in that sense, yes, I mean, they all collectively buy, because what they've done at the outset is they've collated all their spend together, and rather than having a contract that's worth, say, 200 grand or 300 grand, the contract across Scotland's worth 6 or 7 or 8 million per year, and suppliers price it up on that basis. So in that sense, it is already collectively done. But there's very few examples where, from a council level, they are purchasing via ourselves. They may have their own agreements in place with their neighbouring councils for services, but through ourselves, I'm not aware of many. There's a few, as I said.
Yeah, it is something which, like, we have been kind of speaking about and exploring at P4P, to be honest. And it is, we'll have to kind of, if there is interest, further interest in it, is something that we'll have to kind of gauge and work out what the kind of commonly kind of requested items would be, and then look at the avenues in which to purchase those if we do decide to go kind of down that route.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly worthwhile exploring. I would urge any organisation or organisations to look at collaborating where it's possible and where it's a good fit for the organisations. You'll manage to get better pricing in the main, and it also takes the burden off each organisation doing it in full. So I would urge MD to have a look at it, even if it's not via Scotland Sell offering at the minute. If it's via P4P or offline, you want to have a chat about it, I would recommend it. I mean, Scotland Sell's been in existence since 2008. Before that, we were the Authorities Buying Consortium, which focused in the west of Scotland. That was done in 1996, and year on year from then, we've managed to make savings for our members. Our portfolio has grown. However, we still see savings on frameworks that we've had in place for coming up for 25 years now, because they are a commonly purchased item. So it is worthwhile, even at a local level, to have a look at your neighbours and look where you can collaborate.
Thanks, Ian.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? No. All right, well, if anyone does have any questions following the session, once you've had time to reflect and think, think about some of the stuff that's been shared today, then just do ask and we can get a reply for you. Thank you again to Neil and Iain. I'll share Iain's contact details at the end and P4P's as well, and any of the flyers and information that you spoke about as well, Iain. I can pass that on to the people that have been on the call. Sounds like it's potentially worth some further investigation around the collective purchasing and having a look at those frameworks. So hopefully people have got something out of the session today, and it's been a bit informative. I certainly have learned a lot. Just to mention, in terms of sport, there is a lot, and other sectors of course, there is a lot of information being developed in terms of guidance right now around reopening. So I'll certainly be trying to collate some of that stuff in relation to sport and get that shared on our website. There's also a webinar tomorrow for the people that have got sport facilities. It's being hosted by Sport Scotland. It's called Getting Your Facilities Ready for Sport. It's pretty much the same session that we did at the beginning of June with Sport Scotland, where they came on and talked about their guidance, but it will obviously be a little bit different based on the fact we're now a month further ahead and there has been updates. So hopefully that session will be a bit more cognizant of some of the most recent announcements. And some of you might be interested tomorrow. SEN are hosting a session on reopening tourism and hospitality. So if any of you, your facilities or your organisations might be affected by that, then it might be relevant if you want to join that session. It's at 10:30, and I can give you access to that if you are keen, so just let me know. Otherwise, I think that's all to say for now, unless anyone has any last minute contributions that they want to make. But I'll be in touch with some follow-up information, and hopefully you'll have a nice day and get out to enjoy the sunshine before it starts to rain later.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
See you later. Bye bye.